Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another live interview. First, want to apologize for last week. We had some issues, but it's resolved now. So today, I'm Fidel. I'm a member of GHIC, and yeah.
Pastor Ossian, it's good to have you again. So I'm sure you'll be refreshed to hear that we are finally getting on with our interview with the mayor today. There were a few hitches and glitches last week, but they've since been resolved. So apologies one more time. I believe a good thing is always fought and hindered. That makes us the more want to engage with Marvin. Maybe that's the reason why somebody, we don't know which force was trying to hold us back. But please request your friends to link in and join in. We want to engage with these guys in power. Hear what they say, let them open our world, let them open our understanding so that we can see what it is that they do and how they work. I think it's a good thing for us to know and get understanding, and then we begin to move with that. So one more time, welcome to our GHIC Instagram, where we try to open and give an understanding of the political spheres and influence so that our people can get an understanding of how to get into politics. So we are ready to go. Marvin will be joining us soon.
It's already here.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Marvin. Thank you for joining us, and we are grateful that you have taken your busy schedule. You have come in to join us. We welcome you. We are grateful that you have made time, and we want to apologize for troubling you, to keep on pressing you on top of your busy schedule. But the reason why we want to get hold of you is because of the influence that you need. Thank you. I will start again. Very much. I'm sure Marvin is logging in now. Thank you very much, Marvin. How are you?
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. Thank you so much. You are most welcome, and also want to apologize for giving you a program on your already busy schedule. But
no.
Presence here today will help a lot of our young people. I really wanted you to. And our talk today is the Mayor of Bristol, and the first person of your kind to be appointed into such a role in Europe, as we have seen in your biography. We want you to inspire our young people. That's motivation, really. How can you use your platform and your voice to encourage our young people? And having gone through your biography, I saw that one of your desires, visions, is that you raise aspirations for young people and families. That is what we are about to do. Hear your voice. So I will get on with it. And then we've got a lot of questions really to guide that. Our young people can find their place. So without much ado, I will begin to roll so that we give you a platform. The first part, really, that a lot of our people want to know, how did you get into politics? Tell us a little bit about your journey, so that if we've got a few other young people that want to get in there, maybe they could get some guidance from you.
So it's been a long journey. It comes from a basic desire to make the world fairer. I grew up in, I suppose you might say, quite challenging circumstances, and I wanted the world to be better for people like my mum and for people like me, whether it be issues of race, class, and internationally too as well. So I had an idea that I might want to be in politics, but I didn't know any politicians, and I didn't know how to get into it. But I went to university. I managed to get there, and out of university, I went to work for Tier Fund, a development agency, and then I really went in pursuit of finding people I could meet and talk to who knew about politics and political activism. So I went to the United States. I interned for a guy called Jim Wallace, who's quite a well-known Christian political activist. I went to Eastern University, did another master's, worked with a guy called Tony Campolo. And then I'd actually at that point thought, well, is it journalism or politics? And I went to work for the BBC. But my time at the BBC was pretty horrific, to be honest. I joined as a band 5. I left 5 years later. It was so in 5 years at the BBC, I didn't get one promotion. But at the same time, I had met Simon Woolley from Operation Black Vote. And that was about a program that was intentional about getting more black and brown people into political office. And I shadowed an MP, I shadowed Trevor Phillips, and then I kind of had awareness and I was ready. Interestingly, Ossian, something that I may have said to you was Simon really challenged me, because when I joined Operation Black Vote, I was really good at describing how bad the world was and why it was rubbish, but I had no solutions. And Simon said to me, "You've got a great analysis on why the world is rubbish, but what are you actually going to do about it?" And that was a real kick to me, that I could indulge over dinner, you know, with my friends about how bad things were, but I had to do something. And then the Labour Party ran a future candidates program. I did that, and then I ended up, Bristol had a referendum for mayor. A friend of mine said, "You should go for it," and I did. Interestingly enough, I wouldn't have put myself forward for it if she hadn't told me to put it for it. I was thinking about MP. But that's something for people to bear in mind. Make good friends, because good friends will see things in you and see opportunities for you that perhaps you didn't see yourself. And then I became the candidate, and the world took off around me. Then I'm on a roller coaster, you know, and I can't get off.
Wow.
I'm just going to turn this other light on a minute. It might be a bit better to see.
No, that's interesting, because it's not easy in politics. We don't know where to start. And I was reading in your biography and how you came up with it. So we thought you talk, maybe young people can hear. And I like the way that you prepare yourself. I looked at the choice that you made for your career. It was like you were very intentional. Can you explain about that?
So I described it as I was a young Elisha looking for an Elijah. I literally had that idea in mind. Where was I going to find people who could teach? Because my dad wasn't really around. He was around, but he wasn't like putting wisdom into my life or helping me build a life plan. So I didn't know how to put life together. So I was desperate to find an Elijah who would see things in me and speak to me and tell me, okay, if you want to be there, I'm going to help you work out where you want to be in 10 years. And then I'm going to help you work out where you need to be in 5 years if you want to be there in 10 years. Now, to be honest, ultimately, I didn't find that person. Maybe God was the father to the fatherless in the middle of all that, in line with my mum's prayer. And I went through. But having not had that person, I see that you do that in young people's lives, and it's something I want to do, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, help people think about it. But yeah, but I still saw opportunities. I put myself in context in which I could learn something. Now I look back, it all makes sense. At the time, it just felt like I was wandering through the world, lost. So I went to America. I got a better understanding of American politics, race politics, power politics, faith and politics. I then went to Philadelphia again. I came back. I worked for the BBC, so I saw the the guts of a newsroom and how journalists work and how often they're interviewing people and they don't know what they're asking them about. So they've read, they may have read something for 3 minutes before he interviewed them, and I got used to being on the microphone and on camera, and it all adds up. I worked in a National Health Service in public health. So much of my policies around how we can improve health and well-being, mental health, particularly in our communities, we know how important that is, and how early years circumstances such as quality of employment, housing, nutrition have lifelong implications for health and educational attainment and life attainment. So when I look back, I have a collection of experiences that are paying off now. But I can say part of it was intention, but part of it was also about my determination to make sure that those experiences paid off today. So they didn't all feel nice at the time. It wasn't enjoyable working at the BBC. I never imagined myself working at the National Health Service. I was like, God, I wasn't pompous, but I don't think I was anyway. But I was saying to God, I just don't think it's my call to be a mid-level manager in the NHS. I'm sure there's more for me. And I would pray, just like, what's happened, God? Did I take a wrong turn? Have I you know, and now I'm mayor and I'm speaking at the UN, and you know, and on that road was right. But it's the wilderness. Look, let me just say something else. I don't want to over spiritualize it, but every great journey has a wilderness, doesn't it? And you learn a lot about yourself in the wilderness, and you learn a lot about your life and others. You build resilience. Jesus had a wilderness. David had a wilderness. Moses had a wilderness. The people of Israel had a wilderness. And I had my wilderness. And you all will have your wildernesses. What you've got to determine to do is that you learn from your wilderness for when you come into your promise.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that. I like the two words there, intention and determination. I think we need to balance and get the need for those things. One thing I want to carry on from there is the faith issue. We have a lot of challenges and problems among Christians who feel politics. It's not a world for believers. How do you balance a Christian, politics, and family life? And also, I know that you are not ashamed to come openly as a believer and to talk about your God, which is what impresses me about you. So could you tell us a bit of how you balance your Christian faith, being Christian, your political life, and your family life?
So I don't see it as a balance, and I don't see them as trading off. Look, I struggle. Christians who tell me that they're not going to get involved in politics because politics might do something to their faith. I have a number of issues with that. Firstly, if God's given you some talent, what right have you got to withhold it from shaping the world? I think it's a dangerous space to go. You're talking about parable of talents. What are you going to do when you stand before God one day? He's going to say, well, I gave you phenomenal strategic thinking ability. I gave you the ability to get stuff done, and you did not put it in play and use it to make the world a fairer place. You say, well, I was concerned that if I put it in play, it might make me dirty. I might compromise. Well, that's the servant who buried their talent because they feared they might lose it. I think that's a very dangerous place in terms of faith for anyone to end up. Secondly, how weak is your faith if you don't think it can stand in the face of political challenge? That's a weak faith. You know? So to me, those two things compel us to be involved in making the world fairer. And there's a fantastic insight by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in his speech, "A Time to Break the Silence," which I was told when I was in the US by Reverend Emery Searcy, who was the speech that signed his death warrant. And he said, we're all called to play the Good Samaritan, but one day we need to question the very nature of the Jericho Road. And the Jericho Road is created by politics and policy. You know, picking up Good Samaritans is only an initial act, but the fullness of compassion is changing the conditions of the road in which people get robbed. And you do that through policy. You do it through economics. And that's not the only route. You can become a lawyer, get involved in the criminal justice system. You can go into business and change business practice. You can go into academia and change fundamental thinking about what's good and what life is worth. But politics is one of those areas in which we have to engage. And let me just share one other kind of thought. A community organizer shared this proverb with me: power abhors a vacuum, right? If you leave a vacuum, something will fill it. If you don't fill the vacuum with good, what do you think is going to fill it, right? It's like Jesus told the parable of you went and swept out the man's heart, you got rid of the demons and then left it empty. What happened? Well, 7 more demons came and filled it. If you leave space, something else will fill it. Don't leave space for bad things to fill those decision-making positions. I'm not claiming that other politicians are demons, by the way. I'm just saying, you bring your influence to bear. Yeah.
I like that. I like that approach. I think our young people need to hear that, because in your biography, you said you were challenged that the most vulnerable needed people to move beyond pointing failures of the world political leadership and take the risk of stepping up to try and do something to fix it, which is in line with what you were saying, to say sometimes the nature of the Jericho road. So sometimes we just the man who was beat up, the robbers, and then we don't talk about the road itself. Maybe we needed some light. I think that is very powerful for us. Now, in light of what you have said, what advice would you give to men and young men in Bristol in this generation in light of this value and the lack of the Christian voice in the political world? What advice would you give to kind of push them to open their eyes into that area?
So first off, I would say take yourself seriously. I was talking to my chief of staff the other day, and I said one of the biggest interventions in my life, actually one of the most significant things a teacher said to me, was not do it for yourself, but my teacher said, you've got responsibility, Marvin. And that was a huge sign of respect for me, that I had something to contribute to other people's lives, not just to my own life, but other people's lives. And we need to take ourselves seriously. Our young people need to take ourselves seriously. And too often we don't. And actually we cover it with bravado. Yeah, I'm this, I'm that. And actually we're not taking ourselves seriously. That quiet confidence that people can have, that they got something to say when the time is right. Not every day. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to say, whoop, whoop, look at me. You know, it's like if you've seen the movie Coach Carter, when he reprimands his young basketball players for showing off and showboating on a movie. You don't have to do that. All right. If quiet confidence is the thing, but take yourself seriously, take your offer seriously, and talk to people like yourself about what that offer is. Where's the need? Because I'll tell you what, there are plenty of people taking themselves seriously who have very little talent. Let me give you a reality check. Right, the reports will show you that we are one of the most socially immobile countries in the OECD. That means that the circumstances of your birth are by far and away the biggest predictors of where you end up in life. The circumstances of your birth are determined by class and poverty, which is inseparable from race. Right? Poor people generally are deprived of resources historically, so they're disproportionately likely to be born in poor, and social immobility means that they're disproportionately likely to remain poor and die poor. We got to buck that trend. But let me tell you the other side of that coin. Social immobility does not just mean that talented people from poor backgrounds don't go up. It means rich people without talent don't come down because they're stuck at that senior levels. And listen, I'm not going to be uncharitable here, but I will say that as a mayor now, I see there are plenty of people whose confidence is bigger than their competence in leadership in this country at this point in time. And too often with our communities, our competence outstrips our confidence, and it holds us back. So we've got to step up.
You're right. Our target here, we've got a lot of young people from minority backgrounds. Do not know how to reach out. As I look at myself, I always thought I would go back to Africa. So there was no time for me to get involved in politics. So we left that space. So for aspiring young people of this disadvantaged background, what should they look out for to succeed?
So I say a number of things, right? Here. One is I think it's really important to articulate a vision for your life. And what do they say? If you think it has, I don't know what the shares are, but the ratios are, but if you think it has a degree of power. If you say it out loud, it has more power. If you write it down, it has even more power. Now, I'm telling you to do something I never did, right? But I just wish I had done it. I wish someone had told me to do it. Work with someone over the course of a month. It could be with yourself, Pastor, and start and do that hard work of thinking, where do I want to be in 15, 20 years? And you have to start thinking on that horizon. When you've done that, write it down. Then you are accountable to what you write it down. And then you can start thinking, okay, well, where do I need to be? Then break it up. Where do I need to be in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, all right? Now, I would say something about writing something down. It scared me because it felt, oh, now I'm committing myself. But you can change it, right? Writing it down is just the discipline of giving yourself a goal. But if in 5 years you think, actually, I don't want to be an astronaut anymore, I want to get off that ride at being a PhD physicist, that's fine. When I was young, I wanted to be a Royal Marine officer, right? So, and I was going to be the first British-born black Royal Marine officer. I went, when I turned up at the recruiting office, they liked me for some reason, even though I was incredibly unconfident. My teacher laughed at me, when I went down, when I told him I was going to. He said, "No, I wouldn't bother trying, Marv. You have to be really good to do that." All right. I went down to Lympstone and I passed the fitness test, right? 2.5 days of running and jumping and all that stuff. Then I went down to Portsmouth and I passed the Admiralty interview board. And then I went to the medical and I failed the medical because I got a bad right eye, but the medicals are fine. So I did all those tests to become a Royal Marine officer, you know. But what happened was that goal of wanting to be a Royal Marine officer meant that I knew I needed to get some A levels. I need to get a degree. By the time I found out my eyesight wouldn't let me join, I'd already benefited from the journey. And I was able to repurpose that journey towards other goals. So set that goal and then begin to benefit from the journey.
No, that's nice. Huh? That's nice, definitely. Definitely. Thank you. That's about your life, really, and the inspiration. Now, I just want to come closer home to what you do and how you do it so that we see how to help our viewers, our young people in particular, to get into your head, into your brain, to see how you handle challenges and things that come in your job, especially as a person of color. So there are certain areas which are kind of sensitive where you think you need to be politically correct. So there's been a lot in the media recently about race and the impact of racism in Bristol, UK, and international scene. What can you as a mayor, or what are you as a mayor doing to help unite the people of Bristol, especially after the fight about the statues that were received and all the other stuff? Somebody is coming, putting their statue. You authorize people to remove the statue, remove it. At the bear pit here, you removed it. So I'm kind of looking at your role to unify these people who are so different in what they want, what they are looking for, and yet they have one mayor who must please everybody.
So that's a really interesting question. So I would say a number of things. Again, that's my, and sometimes there are lots of things that are true at the same time, and they're not comfortable bedfellows. So in terms of uniting people, I think it's important not to chase after them. So I'm not like what Jim Wallace said. I don't want to be, and I don't think I am, a wet finger politician. By that I mean you wet your finger, you stick it in the air, you see which way the wind is blowing, and then you chase it. All right. What you do need to do is understand people. But if you're a wet finger politician, you will just chase after one group or the other. You'd end up chasing after the loudest group and leaving quiet people behind. And actually, there could be a silent majority out there that's really opposed to that. So I think for point number one, if you want to unite people, you've got to listen and take a position and ask people to join you in that position. Right? Be a rallying point. Point number two is, in line with that, I said all through Colston that I have a view, right? And I'm not sad that Colston's been pulled down. I don't condone criminal damage. I can't. I'm a mayor. But I don't mourn the statue's loss. And again, that's the truth, right? That sometimes, again, two truths that are difficult bedfellows, but it doesn't stop them both being true. But I've also been very explicit in saying the Bristol I want to build is one in which people who are pleased that Colston's statue was pulled down feel at home. People who are indifferent about being pulled down feel at home. And those who are dismayed at the statue being pulled down feel at home. Not because they get what they want, but there's been a process that's shown them respect and listened to them. And my point to people in Bristol has been, do you know what? Sometimes you're not going to get what you want, and sometimes you're going to get what you don't want. But what you can be sure of is that the process we went through to end up in that position is one that's respected you and heard you and values you. And that way, hopefully, we can get to a point where we can live with difference, live well with difference.
Oh, that's lovely. We've got a question from the audience, and Fidel is going to read it out for you.
So, D. Kwabena has asked, you spoke about confident or incompetent people, that is, people in positions of power. So how do you get an audience to express your solutions or your positions?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. Is it how do you get people to take on your solutions?
How do you get an audience to express your solutions?
How do I get an audience to express my solutions? I tell you what, my approach to problem solving is actually to offer solutions with a degree of humility. Let me just share with you that something I've always carried forward that I learned when I was knocking around with the Marines doing these entry tests, right? We were doing this exercise called a desktop exercise. They give you a map, they give you a problem, and they say, come up with an answer. Now, what you can do is everyone around the table can try and solve it and get agreement step by step. My solution was, all right, guys, listen what? I'm not going to be sensitive about this. Let me give you a plan. And I just gave them the whole plan. Now you've got something to rip apart. And I said, now tear that apart. But what I've given them is a starting point, a piece of raw material. And I've said, listen, I don't mind if you pull it apart, but I'm going to give you somewhere to start. Too often people take 10 years to agree a first step. What you just need is people to say, right, this is the journey. And now let's change what I've just said. And I think that's the way I've done it. And what you'll find is, what I think I've found is that people will either take on the plan because they think actually it was a good plan, or they'll say, actually, I like stage 1, 2, and 5. I didn't like 3 and 4, and this is what I suggest. And you say, fantastic contribution, if you think it is. Fantastic contribution. And then you restate your plan with their contributions in it. Then people own it. As a leader, I might just say one other thing. A leader doesn't have to have all the answers. That's really important to recognize. Again, I'm going to go for another Marine image, right? This Royal Marine officer said to us, you young guys, you think that being the best Royal Marine officer is about carrying 100-pound packs up mountains. He said there's an element of that that's true. But the best Royal Marine officer will find the best shot and give them the rifle, the best map reader and give them the map, the fittest guy and give them the heaviest Bergen. Now, I've taken that into leadership. It's not my job to have all the answers. What I've got to do is find the best policymaker and set them free to be the best policymaker they can be. I don't want them to be a worse policymaker than me, to be better than me at policy. That's why I pulled them in the team. You know, I want my speechwriter to be a better speechwriter than I am, so I wouldn't, so that we do great speeches. Great leaders can have people around them who are excellent and who are not afraid to have people around them who are excellent and even better than them in their area. Poor leaders will suppress the talent of people around them. And I think that goes into that solutions. Find the people who come up with solutions and get them on your team. Then they'll own them.
Thank you for that.
That's really good. Thank you.
Wow, you are breaking. You are breaking. Thank you very much. Then now, the elephant in the room, COVID-19.
Yeah.
COVID-19, your views on the efforts so far to tackle this virus?
So let me go back pre-COVID, right? On tackling it, because sometimes you create weaknesses in yourself that make you vulnerable to shocks. Like we create the conditions for floods, and then we shouldn't just be judging ourselves on how we dealt with the flood, but did we create the conditions for the flood, right? COVID. We have had 10 years of underinvestment in public health, right? We've had 10 years of cuts to local government finance that would have meant that we'd have been building quality homes for people, that would have put them in strong communities. Remember, some of the people that have died from COVID have died or been impacted because they have pre-existing health conditions. How'd you get pre-existing health conditions? Smoking, poor quality nutrition, bad start in life, all the things that we know go along with poverty and inequality. We've been increasing the number of people needing food banks, i.e. put that alongside inadequate food for 10 years. So we have created conditions in which a pandemic like this was going to have a greater impact on some people because they've been impoverished. We've also underfunded the organisations that have had to respond to COVID, like local government, like Public Health England. So they've been underprepared. We've underinvested. If you're putting a football team together, you do not underinvest in the training. You know, you prepare for your games years ahead of time. You can't just start training the day before. You start training a year before, and that's what we've done. We've just tried to do it on the cuff. So that's very important for me. In terms of the response, I mean, I'm a local government. I think as a city, we've responded very well, if I can say that, not because we are local government, but because of our partnerships around getting food to people, visiting isolated older people, preparing people for bereavement. The faith groups have been massive within all that. But I will say that working with national government is very difficult. Nick Forbes, who's the leader of Newcastle, was on Radio 4 on Monday. The government had made another announcement about increasing lockdowns in Newcastle. He heard about it on the radio. He's the political leader of Newcastle and he didn't know what government was going to say. And he's saying you can't run the country like that. You know, if you're serious, you have to talk to us at local level. You can't run it from Westminster, Whitehall. And that inability of Westminster and Whitehall to work with people who are not in Westminster and Whitehall before they say things and plan things has led to a whole range of problems, such as the debacle around school reopenings, the lack of preparedness for students going back, the seeming surprise that people will be losing their homes, the U-turns on COVID policy. The lockdown has to happen, to be perfectly frank. There's no way around that. But the coordination and the organisation around it could have been a lot better.
Thank you for that. I think you have opened our eyes, taking us back, because sometimes we don't think like that. We're just thinking about COVID. We want you to do something now. And that is why I'm sure our young people listening are beginning to think from a broader perspective.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, to be honest, I think for the young people, we probably didn't take it as we should have, mainly because we felt we were young, we were strong, and it was affecting more of the older people. So, on our part, if we look at it from the government before, we should probably take it more seriously, follow the rules, which we did initially. But then as we saw things getting worse, we began to say, okay, maybe we should calm down a bit, maybe we should move away. But then as lockdown then got worse and adjust. But I think on the government side, especially for Bristol, they've done, to be honest, they enforced rules everywhere. They shut down the businesses when they were shut down. At the same time, now I think that yeah.
Thank you for that. So Marvin, just to, in light of that, now what is in place for Bristol, the west of England, to come out economically stronger or better after this pandemic?
So we have just published, a draft economic renewal plan. We started work on that as soon as the lockdown started, actually. So we're trying to be as intentional as we possibly can be about growing back the economy. And I don't just mean growing it back. One of the points we've been making is we don't want to grow back an economy without any values. We want an economy to have values. So we're putting the global sustainable development goals at the heart of that economic recovery, which is well worth people familiarizing themselves, really, because it's how can we grow the economy in a way that's inclusive, tackle poverty, and doesn't kill the planet that we've been given responsibility for taking care of and stewarding. So we've been very proactive, and we're mapping out the whole sequence of challenges we think that are coming our way. One of those challenges is going to be that the people who are furthest from the economy are going to be hit first and hardest by the economic depression that's coming. And by definition, they will be least well placed to benefit from any economic upturn when it comes. Now, if we know that, we can begin to do the work to say, well, who are the most marginalized? How do we prepare them for the economic upturn when it comes, rather than just leaving it to chance? Because we know there'll be a heavy price to pay if we do that. So that proactivity is strong. I would also share that we're really pressing government to bring forward investment in our infrastructure. We want to build an underground for Bristol, it's £4 billion. We want to renovate Temple Meads at 200 million, a new university campus at 500 million. That's a lot of work, from planning to laying wires, fitting windows, to management afterwards. We're saying to government, if you bring that investment forward, one is we can decarbonize the economy, so we stop killing the planet, but also we can begin to line up local businesses, local labor, and local skills to actually have those economic opportunities. Again, dare I say, the government has just not given us the level of certainty around its spending that we need if we're going to start planning in a coherent way. Too often we hear a few months before, there's not time to say to people, actually, there's going to be 300 jobs in floor laying that are going to be around for 6 years, starting in 2 years' time when we finish the train station, the university, and the arena. So, it's worth getting yourself skilled up in floor laying, for example. We don't get that level of certainty and foresight, but we are pressing for it. So hopefully we can begin to plan, a lot more.
Before I another question from the audience. I want to follow up on that for those who are wondering how they will strategically position themselves post-pandemic. So how can men in Bristol and young people in particular strategically position themselves to make the future better or a reality from them? So what opportunities are there, having some who is looking at the work from a strategist who actually and all the other stuff there? How would you say advice would be for you to position yourself strategically? It would be better to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Study this, or link up with this, or read this.
So, I would say it's like off season. You got to do your winter training for any athletes amongst you, right? And you've just got to keep investing in yourself right now. For my children, I would be saying now, make sure you're getting everything in your belt that you can, right? And these are qualifications, they are contacts. So identify people you admire. You may drop them a note. People, I tell you, I've advised people before to write to chief execs of companies that they admire, and just say, I really admire you. I know a little bit about your journey. I'd love to know more. You'd be surprised how many people will respond to that, actually, because it's a real source. I mean, write to Richard Brandt, if you admire. Say, how did you do it? Because how flattering is that to someone, right? So one is get your qualifications, right? Get yourself to university, get your MBA, get your apprenticeship, whatever it is, right? Get them in the bag, because no one can ever take you away from them. Start to look around at people you admire and think about approaching them. I can help you approach them. I'm the mayor of the city now, right? Again, nothing about me being special, but it's a title that matters. You know, I can't write 200 letters, right? But if there were a few people that said, Marvin, could you help me approach, the new governor of the Bank of England? I could say, hey, governor of the Bank of England, I've got a young person, they're 18 years old, they want to go into banking, they're really interested in that. You'd have to do a little bit of research. They admire your journey. Would you be willing to talk to them? They might say yes. If they say no, what have you lost? But they might say yes. Then you just made contact with the governor of the Bank of England, right? Certainly within Bristol, there are people who would do that, like the chancellors of the universities, the head of Business West, some of the consultants at accountancy firms. I know that Peter Blair at the courts would do it. He's the recorder, so he's the lead judge for all the Crown Courts and the magistrates across Bristol and the Southwest. There are people in Bristol that would talk to you. You begin to build your network. If I could just say one other thing as well, which I think is important for Black people in particular, look, I think one of the things that we've missed out on in the past as people, a Black community, in tackling racism, is that we focused on getting access to jobs, but we haven't thought enough about building wealth, right? Black people need to work together to get assets and build wealth, own property, own businesses, right? Now, I would really encourage you to watch a documentary on YouTube called The Black Wall Street, right? That was about a segregated Black community who became phenomenally wealthy, right? And I'm not saying worship money. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that if you've got some money, you can feed your kids, support them, and don't have to worry about bills, right? But that segregated community, because they traded themselves, they bought from Black businesses and so forth, they built something. In the end, they got attacked and burnt down by racist, America. But that's important. And I think that as a community, we need to think about, well, how can we collaborate? How can we pool our resources to begin to own stuff, right? Build your own networks, because there are plenty of networks out there that you are not in and you will never be allowed to be a part of that work together to build wealth. So we have to build our own. Martin Luther King talked about this. Malcolm X talked about this. There's plenty of people who have historically talked about this. And the Black churches in the United States have been very, very proactive around this as well. And I know that we've talked about this in the past ourselves, Pastor, as well, just about how we can work together on those fronts. But that would give you independence, particularly if you go into politics, if I can say that too. If you go in and you've got your own wealth, you've got a lot more freedom to be true to yourself, right? Because if people take your elected office away from you, it's fine. You go back to your own person. That relationship with money is a sensitive one. I'm not saying worship mammon, right? But I don't think God made us to live in poverty. In fact, in Deuteronomy, God says, if you do everything I say, there will be no poor among you. And at the end of the same chapter, he says, but there will always be poor among you. Because he knows we won't do everything he said.
No, it's true. Thank you very much. We've got 2 more questions from the audience. We'll take that one before I come back to something I want to direct.
So somebody has asked, during the interview so far, you have made a lot of reference to men and boys. Do you pay equal value to women and girls?
Sorry, you broke up there and it's a little bit broken. Say it again, sorry.
So somebody has asked that men and boys. So do you pay equal value to women and girls as well?
Do I place equal value to women and girls?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My upbringing is I have shared a couple of times that actually much of my worldview was through the eyes of my mum. Single, and she's been interviewed at the church. I mean, single mother, brown baby, 1972, white woman, had a horrific time. And much of my politics has been informed by what she went through and me wanting the world to be better for people like my mum. She never fulfilled the fullness of her talents because even though I think, dare I say, when I think about my childhood, when she looks at me and my sister, she'd probably be quite happy with what we come out with, you know, because we don't expect this. So yeah, I actually have a cabinet lead for women, children and families, but we are the only authority in the country with a named cabinet lead for women, and that's Helen Godwin Teague.
Apologies, I think I'm the one who has raised men and boys a lot because this was started by men's ministry because we saw we had challenges with our boys, a lot of challenges with our men, particularly the number who are in prison, the number who are not rising up to the occasion. But it definitely applies to women and young girls as well. But normally these young boys and men, when they are not in order, they harm and hurt. Yeah, so that's why we really wanted it really does include and involve young girls and women as well.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there is work to be done in each area as well. There is specific work to be done around women, which is why we have a cabinet lead for women. But as you talk, there is a specific piece of work to be done around men. There's a very powerful talk because the work done around men and what it means to be a man and masculinity has huge implications for women. There's a very powerful TED talk by an African-American man called the Man Box, in which he looks at the processes that go around teaching men what it means to be men and realizes how negative the consequences of that are to women, both in terms of actual violence, but also in terms of the violence that comes through poverty and hierarchy. So there is a specific piece of work. I know you do that a lot, Pastor, and I really welcome that. What does it mean to be a man? That needs to be completed.
Yes, so somebody asked, they heard that the congestion charge for the UL coming to Bristol. Yeah,
so I'll tell you about the situation on that. So Bristol doesn't have, well, the UK doesn't have air qualities that are compliant with European standards. It's just dirty air, right? And it does have an impact on health. So Client Earth threatened government with legal action. Government basically looked for someone to hang out to dry, to be perfectly honest, and focused on Bristol. So the backdrop is that we have both a moral, an ecological, and a legal requirement to deliver compliant air quality in the city. So it has to happen. The question is then, how do you make it happen, right? So there are 2 options that involve charging. It's called a CAS-D, which is a small area that charges only commercial vehicles that are not compliant, as in they are diesel beyond a certain standard and petrol below a certain standard. And then there's a CAS-C that involves charging private cars as well. as well as the commercial vehicles. And what the modelling tells us is that if those two charging options are introduced, we will begin to reduce the number of dirty cars going on some of these hotspots, and our air quality will get to compliance. There is no option other than to get to compliant air quality. So we have to do the work on those options, those charging options, because government require it and we are legally compliant to do it. But what we are doing is we're looking at an option that doesn't involve charging. That's why recently we closed Bristol Bridge and Bolton Street to through traffic. It disrupts the travel flow so much that actually our air quality increases. And it may offer us the opportunity to capture the benefits to air quality that we've realised through fewer cars being on the road through the COVID lockdown period of time. If we can do it with these road closures and changing travel patterns, then we can do it without charging, which is what we're trying to do. I've said repeatedly, we're trying not to charge because we're about to go into the biggest economic depression in 300 years. We don't want to take money out of the pockets of businesses and households. But if the non-charging option does not get us to compliance in the shortest possible time, we have no option, no legal option, other than to go for the charging options.
Right. Before I ask that, I just want to look at one of your promises in the election about housing. I'm just throwing this because I just wanted to find out how far are you from your target. Could you just brief us on that particular goal that you had?
Yeah. So we aimed to get Bristol from a standing start, essentially building at least 2,000 homes a year, of which 800 would be affordable by 2020. That's not, as some people are saying, we would build 2,000 every year and 800 affordable. The machinery wasn't in place. It was to build the city's capacity up to be able to deliver that in 2020. We were doing incredibly well, but to be perfectly honest, we're not going to reach that target this year. We're around about 500 affordable homes. Over 2,000 homes delivered, but only 500 affordable. There are some reasons for that. Not least among them is COVID and the impact that COVID's had on the construction industry. And housing developers have started to withdraw from developing. And the other is Brexit and the potential of a no-deal Brexit, which again has caused the investors to step back from delivering homes as they wait to see what happens in the market. Outside of that, we were doing incredibly well, and then we get these two hits. What we believe, though, is that all it's done is delay delivery at those levels by a year. But let me go back to my first point about setting a goal and then benefiting from the journey that I made earlier on. We haven't reached that target, and we're disappointed about that. But what has happened in the interim is that we've built loads of houses, more houses than the city's ever built before, more affordable homes. And I've met the families that have moved in. And we've got, if you look across the city skyline, you'll see all the cranes up that are building buildings on the edge of Castle Park, or the homes that are going up on the edge of Castle Park in the flats. So, we set a goal. Circumstances came about. We're not going to be able to meet that goal next year. My point to the city now is, well, we set that goal. Was it the right goal? Yes. Did we do everything we possibly could to meet it? That's your judgment. I believe we did. Did we meet it? No. Now it's your job to judge us on that. I think we've done everything we possibly could.
No, thank you.
We didn't anticipate COVID and a no-deal Brexit.
No, thank you for that. I said when we started, one of your visions, is to raise aspirations for young people and families. I want to go back to that because I want this to be a platform where some people there are inspired. And then if you were to speak to yourself 20 years ago as a teenager, what advice would you give for the young to make them better, knowing now and the experience you have gone through now?
Well, that's a really nice compliment. 20 years ago, I was 28. 30 years ago as a teenager. So my advice to me would be to not be afraid of failure. Or no, actually, I don't think you ever overcome your fear of failure. Sorry, that's wrong. Don't allow your fear of failure to hold you back from doing anything. All right? I don't know if he's a good role model. Mike Tyson said everyone experiences fear. Gus D'Amato told him this. Everyone experiences fear. Cowards and heroes experience fear. The difference is it stops cowards, right? Heroes keep going. I was immobilized by a fear of failure in my teens, and I gradually learned to overcome that. I was afraid when I applied to Yale University that they wouldn't let me in, but you know what? I applied anyway, and they let me in. I was afraid the day before I went for my first debate to be a mayoral candidate. I was, before I was backstage, just the hours before to go on stage, I was terrified. When I was at the National Labour Conference, and they asked me to introduce Ed Miliband at the national conference, I thought, I got how many hundreds of thousands of people are looking at me here? I was behind the stage. I was so nervous. I thought, what the heck am I doing here? Why didn't I just stay at home and live the quiet life? It's a Moses moment, right? Why can't you just leave me alone? Elijah, we've seen this historically in the Bible when people say, why didn't you just leave me? This is too much for me. And actually, what happens is God often gets, and I love the Moses story because God just gets angry with it. Just go. But don't let fear of failure stop you doing stuff. Just take the fear and embrace it and learn from it. And I use a proverb quite a lot, right? It's from Romans. It says, we don't despise our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. Fear is suffering, right? If you can overcome your suffering, what you will find is that you have the ability to persevere. And every time you suffer and you overcome, you build your capacity. It's like building a muscle. You'll find you find a greater well of perseverance in you. That is your character, right? And then when you've got your character, you've got your hope. That's the biblical wisdom.
Wow. Thank you very much. One more question from the audience. My last question so that we can round up.
So somebody has asked, you mentioned earlier the Black Wall Street and the Man Box. Are there resources that you suggest for people out there?
Yeah, resources for awareness.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what. You can find a lot now. One is I would recommend David Olasuga's work at the moment. History of Black Britain, and just what a person anyway, right? Born into a housing estate in Newcastle, and just a legend at the moment. And there's a series on Black history that he's put out just as a top class historian. That's a fantastic resource for awareness. I'll tell you a book that meant a lot to me, and it's the autobiography of Malcolm X, because it's an authentic journey of even if you don't agree with the faith, but it's an authentic journey of discovery in there. That meant a lot to me. I think another book that I would highly recommend is to go along with that is by James Cone, who's a Christian theologian, African American. It's called Martin and Malcolm, Dream or a Nightmare, in which he compares and contrasts their leadership style. That book, I think, is absolutely fantastic because it really speaks to the humanity of both Martin and Malcolm, and I took a lot of pride from that. I might also, sorry, I read a fantastic, Frederick Douglass is also incredible author to read as well. So yeah, there's a few resources that will get you going there.
Well, that's brilliant. And now finally, my last question here is now about you and your government, because we've been asking a lot of things. So what would you now, as mayor of this city, want us as a people, the church and the community of Bristol, for you, your government, to make your job?
What do I need us as a community to do? Sorry, it's just breaking up a little bit. Did you say?
Yeah. Finally, what would you want us as a people and the community and church do for your government to make your job easier?
Okay. So the key thing I say is to everyone, just step up. And by that, I mean this, right? The things I've been talking about with you as individuals thinking, what do I want to be and where do I want to get to is really important. If you start coming forward to become magistrates, to become lawyers. That creates a whole context. I don't actually individually necessarily want to say, oh, you need to do this for me to help me, pray for me and all that. And that's great. But it's just that you living the fullness of who you are, living your talent, and then supporting each other brings that wave through. I keep saying this to people, it's not just about me, it's not even just about Asher and so forth, right? Where we find our victory is seeing other people take the opportunity in the Bristol that we have helped to create to really fulfill who they are. That's our victory. And that is then evidence that we point to. When 11 of the last 33 magistrates recruited were black and brown people, myself and Asher were able to say, look, we are making a difference. All right? Even, Pastor, when we meet, you know what I mean? That's the difference, because when did you have a relationship with the mayor of the city before, and we could talk and we could think about what the challenges are? That makes a difference, and just testifying that you have that access and you've got these new doors opening up to you, makes a massive difference to me, and it helps me motivationally. And I'll just share another quote with you, because I like these quotes. Reuben Carter was an African-American boxer who was framed and given, I think he went to prison for about 20 odd years. In the end, he was, he won his appeal after 20 odd years and was set free. There's a book. His name was Hurricane, his nickname. He was a book, but also it's a movie starring Denzel Washington. There's a great line in that, in that Reuben Carter says. He said, those who bemoan their lack of opportunity often fail to realize that small doors can lead into big rooms. No matter how small you think the opportunity is, take it, because you do not know the size of the room on the other side of that opportunity. Yeah, and you stepping up like that makes all the world of difference to me and the city.
Wow, brilliant, Marvin! It's been wonderful just to hear your voice and the access that you have given us, then to our viewers and our followers. Thank you for taking time. Please convey our thanks and our gratitude to your wife and your children. We know it's home time, but you made time for us. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
That we got from you, we'll summarize them, put them up again for the viewers to follow up through. And whenever we need you again, we will. So, otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you very much, viewers. I'm sure you have your questions again next time. Just send them to us. We can. You think he's a busy man. We can't be pulling him out this job all the time. But we are grateful. Thank you very much. We'll continue to pray for you, and we wish you well in your job. God bless you.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, Marvin.
Bye-bye.
Viewers, I hope you were blessed, encouraged, and you picked a few tips from that. We will continue to try to engage and bring people who can help us see the world from a different perspective. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you for listening to this message from God's House International Centre, Bristol.